Welcome back to the Draft America podcast here. It's September 4th, which for a lot of football fans is a very joyous day, which means baseball, even though it's not a very followed sport to begin with, is going to be even more so on the back burner as the NFL season kicks off tonight. But we're here to give you your baseball fix, and we're going to talk about a few different topics today, as we usually do, try to jump around a little bit. Let's start with the Detroit Tigers rotation. Okay, so you know that Tarek Skubal is the Cy Young frontrunner. Rough start for Garrett Crochet his last time out, which I think tips the scale heavily in the favor of Skubal. We had this debate last week about the two and how tightly contested they were in terms of their numbers and the legitimacy of their cases for Cy Young, but it looks like Skubal has taken a big edge with that performance. If you look at the Tigers, statistically speaking, their rotation ranks fifth in ERA at 3.85. They are overall not as good in innings pitched. They're actually 19th in innings pitched, but of course, third in strikeouts. They are tied for fifth in WHIP and batting average against. They also are tied for seventh. Of course, we're talking about Skubal, and of course, those numbers are heavily skewed by Skubal, and a lot of people, it's fair to wonder for them whether the Tigers have enough after Tarek Skubal, or are we looking at kind of a mid-2010s LA Dodgers situation where, Clayton Kershaw had to shoulder such a burden, and there was so much, Kershaw in the playoffs, he's terrible. But I think, in fairness to him, a large part of that was just how much he had to pitch, not just, his regular season innings, but then being asked to do so much more in the postseason, pitching on short rest, coming in relief, just Dave Roberts riding him as much as he could. And previous to that, Don Mattingly doing the same. But the Tigers have to avoid that with Tarek Skubal, especially this early in his career. It's just that the rest of the rotation is so untrustworthy, quite frankly. I mean, I think the next best option at this point would be a guy that may not pitch again this year. We know Jackson Job's out for the year, but Reese Olson, there's a chance he could come back, and he was good. In 13 starts, he had a 3.15 ERA. Overall numbers just solid across the board. After that, after Skubal, right now, you're looking at Casey Mize. Again, solid season for Casey Mize. ERA just under 4. He's put up 13 wins. I mean, this is a guy who, of course, was the first overall pick, finally healthy. Not a bad option, but do you consider him a true number 2 starter? I don't know about that. Jack Flaherty, free agent signing, he just has not been good. And frankly, we saw a lot of cracks in his foundation in the postseason last year for LA. He was one of the healthy starters, but I would not say he was one of the more effective starters. He has put up a 4.74 ERA. His hits per innings pitched actually pretty good. Problem is he's given up 22 home runs. He's got a whip of almost 1.3. And again, he seems prone to some really rough outings. After that, Charlie Morton, 5.81 as a member of the Tigers. Chris Paddock, who they also brought over at the trade deadline, 6.89. There's been a lot of consternation about the bullpen, which I understand. It's been better of late. But the rotation after Skubal, can A.J. Hinch and company afford to do what they did last year, which is just sort of piece together games around their ace? Now, I don't know that they'll have to do that quite as much this year, but I would think there's going to be a very short leash with any starter after Skubal. And it just comes down to, do you believe that teams can succeed in the postseason without sort of a traditional rotation? And we're talking about maybe a team with one truly dependable starter. And I think that's why a lot of people have concerns about the Tigers. Look, they're a good offensive team. Their bullpen is solid but not spectacular. They are in a comfortable position to win the American League Central, which I think gives A.J. Hinch the flexibility of keeping guys fresh, maybe tinkering a bit, seeing what works, what doesn't, more so than other teams have the luxury to do. The Tigers are still the favorite. The odds makers have the Tigers as the favorite to win the American League. In fact, the Tigers have been in that position for a good part of this season. They had a mid-season swoon. They're starting to come back around, it seems, of late. But again, I wouldn't say they're playing phenomenal baseball. They had a 1-12 stretch in early July. They've gone 21-14 since, so they've steadied the ship. And again, just having that luxury now to maybe, I don't want to say start resting players. They're still trying to get a first round bye. But with 21 games remaining, they have a 10-game lead in the American League Central over the Kansas City Royals. So almost impossible that the Tigers wouldn't win the division. But I think there's just, to me, I can't see the Tigers making a serious run if they don't have at least one other effective starter behind Skubal in the postseason. And that, of course, is assuming that Skubal is still Skubal in the postseason. And as we were talking about with Kershaw, the playoffs have a way of bringing guys down to size a little bit. It's not just a given that a guy like Skubal, who could be on his way to a second straight Cy Young, is just going to coast in October. I mean, things get a lot harder as you get into the playoffs. He was, again, his overall numbers last year in the postseason were good, but the lingering memory was a tough start in Game 5 of the ALDS against Cleveland. And, he had two fantastic starts before that. But so even assuming that Skubal is Skubal in October, I can't see the Tigers being a pennant-winning team if they don't get somebody to step up. I just don't believe that A.J. Hinch can do what he did last year through an entire postseason. I think that's a big part of why the Tigers didn't get to the World Series last year. Yes, they won that wild card series against Houston. They ended their ALCS streak. They took Cleveland to a Game 5, but it just feels like you cannot hide. You can't hide your flaws in the postseason. I mean, every team is going to be a little bit flawed, and you can cover them up a little bit. But when you have a glaring hole, on your team, you have to find a way to at least patch it up. You can't just hope it doesn't come up as a problem. It's going to. So the Tigers really need, I think, at least one other starter to step up. And again, will that be Casey Mize? Will they get Reese Olson back? Does Charlie Morton suddenly turn into vintage playoff Charlie Morton? Maybe Chris Paddock, he comes back to being that top prospect he once was. I don't know. But they need that to have success in October. All right, let's talk about the Chicago Cubs now. And in a strange way, the Cubs are actually in a similar position to the Tigers. And I say strange way because the Cubs don't figure to win their division. They're 6 back of the Brewers, but they have a 9-game lead in the wild card race, which is almost as big as the Tigers' division lead. So the Cubs also have a little bit of a luxury where, they want to win the division, but realistically, not going to happen. And so they can kind of look at how they want to line things up for the postseason, and they have the luxury, and we saw this last night. Cade Horton, who, by the way, and we'll talk about this briefly at the end, is your new Rookie of the Year favorite. 5 no-hit innings, but he was on a strict pitch count, and so clearly the Cubs want to make sure that he is rested and available for the postseason, and this kid has been absolutely fantastic in his rookie year. Again, he's now listed as the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. It's amazing how much this thing shifts over the course of the year. Jacob Wilson in the AL, he was a huge favorite. And then all of a sudden, Nick Kurtz has the 4-homer game, and he basically wraps it up. Drake Baldwin, he was the heavy favorite for a good part of the year. And then Isaac Collins caught up to him, and now here's Cade Horton. So we'll touch back on that briefly. But Horton, in 20 games, 19 starts this year, 9-4 with a 2.78 earned run average. Never pitched in the major leagues prior to this year. He's just been, a 1.14 whip. He's only giving up 7.5 hits per 9 innings. And again, 5 no-hit innings last night. So the Cubs got to feel pretty good about their rotation. They actually rank 8th in rotation ERA, 12th in bullpen ERA. We know that Matthew Boyd was an all-star this year. He's got a sub-3 ERA. He has not cooled off. I think if there's concern about the Cubs right now, it's their offense. Now, overall, the numbers are still pretty good. They're 8th in homers, 7th in runs, 9th in OPS. But cause for concern, Kyle Tucker, we know he was playing through a finger injury. It sounded like a broken finger, although I don't know if that was confirmed. His second half, 242 with 5 home runs. Pete Crow Armstrong, he was the second MVP favorite after Otani for a while. He has completely fallen off. 212 with 3 homers in the second half. So is this a function of just, maybe in PCA's case, hitting a wall, being a young player, Tucker battling through the injury, or is this maybe the league figuring the Cubs offense out a little bit or being a little too one-dimensional? I'm not sure, but I think at 80-59, the Cubs don't have to, or 80-60, excuse me, the Cubs don't have to apologize really for anything. They've been a very good team at home this year. They're 43-26. They have the National League's second best run differential at plus 115. They've played, average baseball for a while. They got off to a really good start. The question now is, for them, do they want to prioritize just kind of pacing themselves for the playoffs? Do they feel like it's important to gain some momentum? Remember, the Cubs have not been, a mainstay in the postseason in recent years. They only made it in 2020, which was the shortened season. They haven't been to the postseason since 2018. Outside of that, when they lost the wild card game, it was a single game then at home to the Rockies. So this is kind of new territory for the Cubs. The last 2 years, they've won 83 games. They were kind of in the playoff chase, but not really those years. But this year, they are basically all but guaranteed to go to October. And I think this Cubs rotation is good enough. I think they're in a better place, honestly, than Detroit. Because, yes, as much as you'd love to have Skubal, you could argue he's the best pitcher in baseball. I would take my chances with Matthew Boyd as my ace, and then going with the rest of the rotation, which features Shota Imanaga, as we mentioned, Cade Horton, and the tremendous year that he's having. There is some depth there in that rotation, and then they found themselves really out of nowhere this year. They found themselves a closer in Daniel Palencia. Coming into this year, Palencia had only pitched in 37 Major League games over the last 2 years. This year, 50 games pitched, 50 innings, 40 hits. He's got 57 strikeouts. League's hitting 217 against him, and he's got a 2.16 ERA. He's 22 for 24 in save opportunities. So, yeah, the rest of the bullpen, you don't know, but the Cubs have, I think, at least the foundation of a team that could make a run. The problem is the National League is deeper and more talented than the American League. You've got Milwaukee having this incredible season. The Dodgers still figure to be a sleeping giant right now, despite their struggles of late. The Phillies, even without Wheeler, are very deep and experienced. Not sure what to expect with the Padres and the Mets. It looks like that's going to be the playoff field, basically the 6 teams here that we're talking about. But I would say Chicago, if they get a couple of really good performances from their rotation, it just comes down to whether the offense can score enough runs without hitting the home runs. That's always the key in the playoffs. You have to be able to put together, rallies, find offense in a variety of different ways. By the way, one stat I wanted to throw out about the Tigers, didn't touch on this earlier. They are dead last in Major League Baseball in stolen bases. This is an era now with bigger bases, more teams are running. The Tigers, speed for them is just not part of the equation. They have 58 stolen bases. That's 5 behind the Giants for second worst, and 10 behind the next closest American League team, which is the A's at 68. The Cubs, though, they're third in baseball in stolen bases. Tampa Bay's got a massive lead on everybody with 175. Milwaukee with 144. And then the Cubs have 139 stolen bases. They've only been caught 30 times. So they do bring speed to the equation, their speed and power. If they can incorporate that in their offense in October, I wouldn't be shocked if they made a run. I wouldn't be nearly confident enough to pick them to go to the World Series right now. But again, the foundation is there. They've got some pitching. They've got a closer. And they've got an offense capable of hitting, but they need their stars, as we mentioned, Tucker and PCA both slumping in the second half. Let's touch quickly on the Rookie of the Year debate in the National League, which has shifted quite a bit, as I mentioned earlier. Cade Horton, with his outstanding run of pitching here, punctuated by yesterday's 5-inning no-hit outing against the Atlanta Braves. He was on a pitch count. He threw 75 pitches, 52 strikes, only 1 walk and 6 strikeouts. And in his young rookie season, he is proving to be he potentially, I mean, maybe after Matthew Boyd, the next best pitcher in that Cubs rotation. You look at his recent starts. Guess what? Cade Horton's only given up runs in 3 of his previous 9 starts. You heard me correctly. He's only allowed runs in 3 of his previous 9 starts. Check this out. Scoreless outings, 5 2/3 against Boston, 6 1/3 against the White Sox, 5 scoreless against the Orioles, 5 2/3 scoreless against the Reds, gave up 1 over 5 2/3 against the Jays, 1 over 2 2/3 against Milwaukee, 6 scoreless against the Angels, 2 runs over 5 at Coors Field, and then the 5 no-hit innings I mentioned. I mean, this has been one heck of a run. And I'm not saying that Cade Horton alone is going to put his team on his shoulders in October, but he has certainly stormed ahead. I would say stormed ahead, although maybe not far ahead, but stormed back from being off the radar in this NL Rookie of the Year race. Isaac Collins had a nice run, but really, I think the only other competition at this point for Rookie of the Year in the National League is Drake Baldwin, who, again, as a catcher, I think you always get a little more credit for putting up good offensive numbers. Baldwin has had a very solid rookie season, 280, 15 homers, 62 RBIs over 103 games. He's got an 808 OPS, 125 OPS plus. And again, in a season where the Braves, have vastly underperformed, he's been one of their bright spots. He really has. And doing it at the catcher position, I think is, again, even more impressive, which is why when you talk about the AL MVP race, why a lot of people feel like Cal Raleigh should win no matter what, because the value of that catching position is just so understated. And Baldwin has been pretty much the same in the first and second half. He was at 279 with 11 homers in the first half, 284 homers in the second half. And so he's, again, that rookie wall hasn't really come into the equation for Drake Baldwin. But I think if Cade Horton puts together a couple more starts like this, it's going to be hard to argue him for Rookie of the Year. However, if he's very limited or has a rough outing or two the rest of the way and Baldwin continues to stay consistent the way he's been doing, I think you'll see Drake Baldwin get it in that case. But right now, Horton is the favorite. I think he's the guy if it ended today. And just interesting how much that's changed. Again, Isaac Collins, not to discount him, he's had a really good rookie year. He's had a lot of big hits for this Brewers team having this magical season. His overall numbers are good, 276, 9 homers, 54 RBIs this season over 115 games. But again, it's going to be hard for him to now outperform both Baldwin and Cade Horton. Thank you again for tuning in to the Draft America podcast. Hope to keep bringing you more content here in the coming weeks. I know football season's underway. We'll have to start incorporating that into the equation. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and of course, draftamerica.com. And we will see you soon.